Utopia, welcome to Fact, and welcome to the first event in our Lesbian Literary Weekend. I'm very pleased to welcome someone we've been trying to bring to Liverpool for a few years, and finally our diaries have coincided. Please welcome Helen Sandler and Sarah Waters.
Hello, good evening. I'm Helen Sandler. I'm going to talk for a minute while Sarah goes through the difficult technical challenge of clipping on her microphone while watched by 200 people. Done it already, and I haven't even got my notes out of my pocket. Well, it's great to see you all for what promises to be an interesting evening. Sarah Waters, as many of you will know, is the author of 5 novels so far. She very often puts lesbian characters centre stage, which has made her a favourite for years with lesbian audiences. But these days she's also loved in the mainstream, helped along by the fact that many of the novels have been televised. Sarah's won several awards, and most recently, in fact last night, she won Stonewall Writer of the Year. Recently, as you may know, The Little Stranger was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and we're going to talk about that later this evening. It's her latest book, and quite a captivating book, which probably you won't all have read yet, but which you'll have a chance to buy later, and Sarah will be signing copies. Should we start by talking about Tipping the Velvet?
All right.
Quick reminder, Tipping was a picaresque tale of music hall male impersonator Nan King. It was a word-of-mouth success among lesbian readers, but then took off as a bestseller in the wider world. Probably helped by the racy TV adaptation written by Andrew Davis, which we wanted to show tonight, but they quoted us something like £250 a minute to show the clip, which would have rather wiped out the box office taking, so we just have to imagine that one.
Or we could act it out for you.
We could act it out. We could act out the song. How did it go?
Oh, I don't know. You were singing it earlier on.
I'm rather shy. I'm rather shy.
He's rather shy. Do you know, when I was a toddler, and I only realised this like years after I'd written Tipping the Velvet, when I was a toddler, I used to entertain the family. I used to sing My Old Man's a Dustman with a stick and a hat and completely naked. I won't reproduce for you now because it would be too horrible. But isn't that funny that I thought I was a male impersonator at age 3?
Except that as a male impersonator, you probably shouldn't have been naked because it was a little bit of a giveaway.
Well, I was only 3. Despite the hat.
So what about the male impersonation theme? What drew you to that?
Well, I for ages I've been collecting old postcards. It's my little nerdy habit, my nerdy hobby. And what I've always been especially interested in, obviously, is something with a kind of queer or lesbian edge to it. And the first things I started finding or collecting were pictures of male impersonators. And they're amazing. If you've ever seen any of them, Victorian or Edwardian pictures of people like Bester Tilly or Hetty King, you know, they were big mainstream entertainers, and it was a big part of the music hall repertoire, male impersonators. And they look like drag kings. They just look, there's an incredible attention to detail, you know, completely dapper. And they'd have different acts. They'd be like a swell, or they'd be a soldier, or a vicar. There's pictures of Bester Tilly as a vicar with a tray of tea and cakes, which I've always really liked. And they just really intrigued me, you know, and I started reading about male impersonation, and because it doesn't exist in our culture anymore outside of things like drag king circles. It's just faded away, and I suspect it disappeared because the images became sexualised. You know, that kind of image, the mannish woman, became a bit sort of sexualised, probably around the time of loneliness and things like that.
What was it about spiritualism that particularly?
Yes. Well, again, I suppose, you know, having written Tipping the Velvet and focused, I was kind of continuing a similar project. You know, for Tipping, I'd been looking for areas of lesbian potential in the 19th century. So I found male impersonation in the music hall, and then I'd looked at women's clubs in that novel, and also suffrage and socialism and women's networks in there. And with Affinity, it was a similar thing. I'd been interested in prisons, Victorian prisons, and fastened on Millbank Prison, which was a real horrid, huge prison where Tate Britain is, more or less. And also spiritualism, which I've been interested in for a really long time. And I knew already that spiritualism which was, again, was very mainstream in the 19th century, you know, and very theatrical. I mean, you can see from something like that, I mean, that's exactly how it was. You'd gather in a darkened room, rather like we're doing now, but instead of watching a film, the medium would do all sorts of exciting things for you, and, you know. And it was an area in which women could become very powerful, because women were seen as naturally passive, and so it meant that they were seen as perfect channels for the spirits. And it was also an area in which working class women and girls could become quite powerful, because spiritualist gifts were seen to be sort of spread quite democratically, you know, through the population. So often, say in a middle class house, people would have a séance and they'd invite their servants in as well as their middle class friends. And some middle class women became very, very successful and made a lot of money out of it. How many more books have I got in me? You know, how many more books does my life have in it? You know, each book takes me 3 or 4, maybe 3 years. You know, so sort of looking ahead, it's weird, and it's a tiring process. And every time I finish a book, I think, Christ, I just can't do it again. You know, I can't go through that, start a book from scratch. It's like starting a new relationship. You know, I can't be bothered anymore. I'm in a relationship. I don't have to do that, thank God. But the thought of, you know, having to get to know them, get to know their funny little ways, meet their parents, I mean, oh my God. And it's like that with a book. You have to. That's what it's like when I finish a book. But actually now I'm just thinking about the next book in a more excited kind of way, and I'm remembering, oh no, I do like it after all.
Enjoy the rest of the festival, and let's give a big round of applause to the wonderful Sarah Waters.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm just been to the Converstaion with Sarah Waters. But during the discussion, you were getting asked a lot of serious questions about your books. I personally haven't read your books, but I've already seen the adaptations. Do you think they're true to the books completely?
The adaptations, yeah, I think they did a really good job. You know, I've had 3 books adapted now, and of course they have to make some changes. You always have to make some changes when you move from page to screen. But they stayed very faithful to the spirit of the books, and I really appreciated that.
Out of all the books you've wrote, what would you say was your personal favourite?
Oh God, I like them all in different ways. You know, I think I'm very fond of Tipping the Velvet because it was my first novel, and it's lots of fun, and I really enjoyed writing it.
I've just started reading Tipping the Velvet as well. I've got right into that straight away. But if you could have changed anything about the adaptations, would you?
Oh wow, it's hard to say. I think there were some things they did in Tipping the Velvet that, if I'd been in control of it, I would have done a bit differently. So there was a character called Florence in Tipping the Velvet who's quite strong in the novel, and they sort of made her a bit weaker in the TV series, and so I thought that was a bit of a shame.
I could speak to you about your new book as well.
Yeah.
Are you considering doing that as an adaptation as well?
Well, I've sold an option on the film rights for the new book.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because all my other books have been adapted for TV, which has been great. But this one, there's interest from a film company, so it'd be really exciting if that happens.
Well, I'll definitely be watching that anyway, because I've loved them all. The Tipping the Velvet and Fingersmith, my personal favourite ones of mine. I both have them on DVD. I should have brought them with me to get you signed.
It's been really nice tonight that lots of people in the audience have been, you know, quite young, and I get the feeling it's. Of course, there are still problems, and there's lots of homophobia, but I get the feeling that it's quite a good time to be a young lesbian or gay man in Britain at the moment. Do you think that's true?
I definitely think that's true. I think it's like there's a lot of changes happening, because I was at the launch for Home Safety the other day, and it's like Gary, the Home Safety the other day, he was like talking about that, and he's like, you know, we're going to make a difference and we're going to change it, and we're not, like, because the attack on James Parks, he said, like, let's just do something about it to change it. I think now it's definitely a good time to be coming out and saying, okay, I'm gay, so what?
And if you can look forward, say, 10 years or 20 years into the future, what changes would you like to see happen for lesbians and gay men?
I'd personally like for people not to see them as being different. It's like not see me as being different, to just like not ask me about my sexuality, because hopefully one day that'll just be, well, that's me, that's fine. You know, it's just like I don't go up to someone and think, oh, by the way, are you straight? You know, because that's a bit not weird. I don't think it's normal, but you know, that's a joke, by the way. Be whatever sexuality you want.